Hello, friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. All right, it's been a while since we've done one of these, but it has to happen. I've discovered another problem caused by just shoddy workmanship by the maintenance crew around here. Upstairs in one of the closets, this is the closet where I keep all my dress clothes, so obviously I've been in and out of there a lot in the last week or so. Apparently the screws that hold the door onto the wall have been removed and replaced a bunch of times, and they've just literally stripped out the wood, and opening and closing this door repeated times over the past week or so has gotten to the point where everything's so loose up there that the door won't even close properly now. Now, fortunately, this is a real simple fix. And it should have been something they should have done right the first time, but we know how this place works. So that's going to be our project today. We're just going to fix that. Simple fix. Let's go. This is the door in question here, and when you actually get up here and look at this, it's clear what the problem is. This hinge is just loose. And when you open up the door and look inside, it's clear what's going on here. These screws have been inserted and removed a bunch of times, and they've stripped out the hole, and now opening and closing this door multiple times over the last week or so has just kind of pulled them out. Now, like I said, this is a simple fix. We can remove these screws, and we're going to replace them with similar but longer screws that'll dig deeper into the wood. And like I said, this is a 5-minute fix if you have the parts, and all we have to do is go over to Home Depot and do that. So let's pull these screws out and start with that. So I think the best thing to do to start with this is I'm just literally going to take this door off the wall. That's really easy to do. And in order to do that, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can either unscrew these screws here, and then the same screws down here at the bottom. But the problem you run into with that is as you get more and more screws out, the weight of the door is all resting on what's left. So instead, I've always found that the better way to do it is to just knock the pins out of the hinges. So I think we're going to do that. So the first thing you want to do is close the door as much as you can. Now this is why I've been having problems, because there's so much play on this side here, the door won't even line up with the jamb here. So I'm going to see if I can just push it closed just a little bit just to hold it in place. Now all of the weight of the door is kind of resting on the door jamb and not so much on the hinges. So when we pop the hinges out, it won't cause the door to fall, or it won't cause any stress on any of the remaining screws that are there. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a hammer, and I'm going to knock this pin out right here. Until it's loose and it pops all the way out. So before I even messed with this one, I realized this one was going to be a little bit of a pain to get out, because they have literally painted the hinge, the pin and the hinge together. This is not something you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, when you paint something, you keep it off the hinges. The problem is you have moving parts along here, and if you get paint inside of there, that's going to gum everything up, and it's going to make the door creak sometimes when you open it. Because the second you get foreign material into those hinges there, that's going to start rubbing, and it's going to make noise, and eventually you'll have a squeaky door. So we're going to try and clean that up a little bit, but right now I got to be able to get at this pin right here, which is just kind of painted to this. So I'm going to go at this with a pair of channel locks and maybe break it loose with a flathead screwdriver. Let's start off just with a flathead screwdriver and see if I can break it loose just that way. Sometimes you can get it in between the pin there and break it loose a little bit, but that's not really working that well. So let's get in here with the channel locks. And what I'm going to do is I'm just literally going to grip onto the pin itself and see if I can move it around a little bit. Yeah, I got it moving now. So maybe I can get in there, spread it a little bit. Yeah, now we're cooking. Oh yeah, see this is, okay, so what they did is, looks like they put the pin in backwards on this one, so the pin is actually going in from the bottom. That's a really stupid idea, a stupid way of doing things, because what ends up happening is now if the pin is in the bottom and you open the door enough and the pin slides, eventually the pin is going to slide out. it'll fall out because you've got gravity working for it. So that's another thing we'll have to do is we'll just put that in right when we're... And now since I did get the cap off, we can go from the underside, or go from the top. And then pull the pin out. Okay, I got the pin out. So like I said, this should be going in this way, not this way. Because eventually, you know, gravity will just make that thing fall out, and then all of a sudden one of your hinges isn't connected. So at this point now, the door is literally just being held in place by the frame. So now we can pull the door off. So I just kind of push my tools out of the way here, and now the door will literally just come right off in my hand. And I don't need it right now, so we're just going to put it over there. At this point now I can deal with this because I can just remove these screws, and the only weight resting on it is just the weight of the hinge, and that's nothing. I'm actually going to remove both the hinges because while the problem is up here, you know, there's no reason that we shouldn't do it right down to here too, because this is kind of a mess too. Look at that. It's moving a little bit. It's not as bad as it is up top, but you know, if you're going to do three new screw holes and you got 2 hinges, you might as well just do 6. You're right here, right? So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm just literally going to remove these 3 screws. And then I'm going to do the same thing down below. So these are clearly the screws that came with the thing, and under normal circumstances they would be fine, but clearly these have been removed and replaced a bunch of times, and they've just kind of stripped out these holes. And I noticed it really, especially on top, that when I took out the one screw that was at the top of the hinge there, it was actually hard to take it out because it wouldn't even grip under the wood enough to walk its way out. So I actually almost had to pull it out. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go get a screw like this. I'm going to go get 6 new screws like this, but I'm going to maybe get one that's maybe 2 inches long or longer, because then when it'll drive past where it is, it'll grip onto the new wood again. So that's real simple. We're just going to take that with us to Home Depot. Actually, let me take this one to Home Depot because that's the actual diameter. I noticed that this looks like they tried to replace it at once and they didn't quite replace it with the right kind of screw, because ideally it should be sitting flush with the hinge there, not sticking out a little bit. That's going to cause spacing issues if you do that. So I'm actually going to take this one to Home Depot with me, and we're going to get something similar to that. So let's go to Home Depot, because you all know how much I love Home Depot. So when buying screws, one of the things you want to pay attention to not only is the size of the screw, but the type of head that it has. This one's called a flat head screw because it's literally flat on the top, and then it has the tapered part on the bottom. So I'm going to get one that's roughly the same size. Now I'm kind of looking at these number 8 1.5 screws just because the heads are roughly the same shape and diameter too, because you want it to fit in there flush with the thing. If the diameter of the top of the head is larger than this one, then it's going to stick out of the hole a little bit, and it's not going to go in flush. But I'd like to find something longer than 1.5 inches, and I definitely don't want to buy 100 of them if I don't have to. Now as I'm looking around, I'm seeing this number 8 2.5 screw. It's got the same size head, but this one's 2.5 inches long. So I think that's going to be my choice here, because I can get that in a 3-pack. So I buy 2 of those and I'm good to go. Now you got to remember how the doors are usually hung on the frame in the house. You have the frame around the outside of the door, and then underneath that there's at least 1 2x4. So I got at least 3 inches of wood that I can dig into. And since I'm only using about 3/4 of an inch on those old screws, that'll give me at least 1 inch or 1.5 inches digging into new wood, and that should anchor really well. So this is what I'm going to get right here. And while I'm here, I'm going to get one of these too. I recently noticed that the electrical outlet receptacle behind the refrigerator doesn't have a faceplate on it. That's just sloppy. So they're cheap. I'll get one of those and we'll put that on too. It's all the time I spend at Home Depot. I wonder if I can get them to advertise on my vlog. Alright, so before I get too much into this, I kind of want to clean some of the gunk off of this. They've just literally painted and repainted over this thing so much that it's kind of interfering with it. I was actually noticing how much buildup there is here. This just isn't good. This is going to interfere with the motion of the door. We're going to get the paint inside the hinges, and it's going to cause all that squeaking and all that. So I just want to kind of at least clean the stuff around the hinges and make sure it's sitting flat. I noticed back here that on the back side, the part that goes against the wall, there was actually such a buildup of paint that this thing wouldn't even sit flush in there anymore. So I've already cleaned that off, and we're just going to see if we can, yeah, see, this just comes off real easy. That's clearly like 1/8 of an inch of paint right there. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of peel off as much of it as I can. I think I know why that. I just think I realized why the pin was upside down on the bottom hinge. You notice there's two ways that these hinges go together, but these are both the ones from the door. So what they obviously did is they flipped the hinges around at one point, because these two actually fit together. So this is a pair of hinges, but what ended up happening is when they pulled the hinges off at one point, they flipped it over like this, and then they reinstalled it wrong. So usually you want to have the piece with the three loops here on the attached to the wall, and the one with the two loops attached to the door. That way you can pop the pin into the hinge here, pop the door in, and then knock it into place. So I think what we'll do is we'll just take the hinges off the door too, and we'll fix that too. Might as well do it right? And since the one that's wrong is just the one on the bottom, I'm just going to take the bottom one off. That needs to be tightened up a little bit anyway, right? Take that one off. We'll put this one back on in its place. Piece of cake. And of course, this became a little bit of a problem too, because when they painted on this one, they got paint into the Phillips holes on the screws, so I can't even get the drill in there really well. But we'll figure it out. Yeah, see, there's nothing wrong with these being stripped out. They just weren't driven in right. That's better. That hinge still looks like hell, but that's what happens when you paint over and over and over again. Now, as I mentioned over at Home Depot, generally you can get doors that are pre-hung. They come with a frame, they come with the hinges, and the door is already pre-hung. And all you got to do is pop it into the hole, center it up, get it attached to the frame behind it. And generally what you have is you have this piece here, and then there's at least one piece of 2x4 here, and usually two of them. So I've got a good 5 inches that I could dig in with a screw. So these 2.5 inch screws are going to do a good job. Now, I always recommend that you pre-drill your holes, because if you don't do it, then sometimes pushing the screw through and trying to have the hole be dug out by the screw, what you'll end up doing is you'll end up splitting the wood. So if you drill the holes, you usually end up with better results. You don't split the wood, and you end up with a stronger seal. And then we just reattach the hinge. I just kind of start them by hand here. It goes easier that way. And where'd my third one go? There it is. drive them home. Okay, one of the things I'm noticing here is that this wood is a little rotted out. So this screw and this screw are going in actually relatively easy. This is really going to be the one that's going to be doing all the work here, because this is the one that's holding tight. So I'm going to drive them all home now, just nice and slow. Repeat on the other two. I think they're still going to be fine, but I think I mentioned to you when they replaced the sliding glass door on my going out into my backyard area, they discovered that the wood underneath was all rotted out from termite damage. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's what's going on here. Glad this isn't my place, but I'll tell you, I've learned some new things of what to look for when I buy a house. Now I'm just going to repeat the same process on the hinges above, and we'll go from there. Reattach the hinge. Try to screw in just a little bit by hand. Once again, it seems like this middle one is going to be the only one that's going to really grip. That's probably what the problem was, is that the two bottom screws were, or the top and bottom screw were really loose in there, and the only one of them there that was a really long screw was the one on the top. And so this one wasn't getting deep enough to get a grip. This one was in bad wood and wasn't getting a grip. And this one just was in bad wood, and even though it was a little longer screw, it just still wasn't enough. So we're going to do the same thing again. Not going to drive them all the way home until I get them all close. Once again, do the wiggle check, make sure it doesn't move at all. It should be nice and solid in there. That should be good now. Let's drop those hinges back in there and see what happens. All right, so what I'm going to do now is we're just going to rehang the door. And I'm actually going to start on the bottom here. And I'm literally just going to walk it into place. What I'll usually do at this point is I'll set the hinge in there so that kind of when I get it into position, I can pop it into place. Now it's at least kind of temporarily held there. Now I can go up here and realign up here. Get everything lined up. It's lining up perfectly. I like that. That's always nice. And now all I gotta do is just knock the hinge back into place. Now they got these funny little cap things that are going into the bottom of the hinges. So I think that's probably just to kind of keep junk from kind of getting into the hinge from the underside. So we don't usually use those in California. I didn't have those in my house, but since they're here, I'm just going to pop those back in. Those just go in the same way the hinges do on the top. It's just they go from the bottom and you pound them in a little bit. And then same thing down here. And we're done. Is our door closed now? Yeah, it still sticks, but I knew there was a problem there. They've painted this so many times now that the thickness of the jamb and the thickness of the door have increased to the point where actually it looks like the problem is up here. Probably I just need to shave a little bit off of the top of the door and it'll close, because it looks like there's clearance here. It's not as much as it should be, but it shouldn't be hanging up there. So yeah, it's really obvious that the door is just a little too tall right about here. It's probably because of all the paint that they put in over the years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it up here with a planer And I'm going to just kind of shave maybe like 1/8 of an inch off of this, just so I get some clearance so that'll close properly. So I got my planer here, and I'm just going to basically shave a little bit off the top here. Get the gunk out of the blade here, or else it doesn't work very well. And there we go. It's still not perfect, but it opens and closes now. I'm going to pull a little bit. I should probably plane a little bit more off of here. But if I was really smart, what I'd do is I'd go over and get the table saw over at the storage locker and just shave about 1/8 of an inch off the top of that. But we're not going to do that today. It isn't worth that much trouble. I can at least get into here now, so that's what matters. And it opens and it closes, and yeah, so there we go. All right, so you can clearly see that wasn't a very complicated project. It cost all of $3 at Home Depot, so you can't even write it off as too expensive to do. This is just another example of the maintenance people around here just don't care. If they need to do something, rather than doing it right, they just look for whatever it is they have in the back of the truck that will band-aid the job up, and that's how they've done it. There's no reason that they could not have done what I did. Like I said, I really probably should still take that door off the wall and shave about 1/8 of an inch off the top of it. But you know what? That's not my problem. I can get into and out of it now, so that's all that matters. If I have to pull a little bit, that's fine. I'm not going to be here for very long. But I can use that closet again. So that's how easy that was to do. So anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.